Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the Standing Committee meeting of March 9th, 2021 to order. Are there any changes to the agenda from Council? Mayor Michaels?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to change the order of the closed session items as CAO Olson will not be part of the number two, of number one. So if that could be the last one and she could just leave and it could be council on our own. Thank you.
Okay, that's to change the order of the two closed session items. Council, anything else? Okay, administration, any changes?
No changes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Magoon?
I'd like to see consensus that the council adopt the amended agenda for the March 9th, 2021 Standing Committee meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council, all those in favor? That was carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to our first agenda item, Citizens Minute with Council. Ms. Anderson, are there any citizens that like to address Council today?
No citizens registered to speak.
Okay, thank you. That would bring us to our first action item then. Options for future town hall and engagement events. CAO Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is before council tonight to address a postponed motion from October 2020 that directed administration to prepare a report to support virtual town hall and other organizational engagement events. And this is slated to come back before the end of Q2. Administration had already begun work on some of these options in the report, and it was fairly straightforward to finish up and bring this item to tonight's standing committee meeting. The information that's included in this report outlines the potential solutions for online engagement, including the scope and costs of each. Typically, this type of decision where there's no budget request and there's limited organizational impact would be made administratively. However, the changing landscape through the pandemic for the kinds of engagement that we can do, some direction and decision of council does allow for direct communication with council and the community on what to expect as we move forward. So this was something that was requested by council prior to budget 2021, and some additional information was pulled together to support what we do for future budget and strategic planning engagement activities. As well, in bringing this forward, that postponed motion and that direction will be closed off within our action tracker. So within the report, there are some comments on the resumption of in-person engagement. That information was included. Once allowed through the relaxing of provincial restrictions, in-person methods can be reconsidered and layered in as appropriate, following whatever protocols or restrictions are currently in place. It's understood that there will be and will continue to be a portion of our population that will prefer to attend virtually. So this is timely as well. The recommended action tonight is that committee direct administration to bring the future town hall options report to the April 6, 2021 regular council meeting for approval of option 1 for future virtual town halls and other online organizational engagement events. I do have Mr. Fayez and Ms. Way here to support me in answering any of council's questions tonight. So I turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO Olson. Council, comments, questions? Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I guess my question for administration is, like everybody else, I hope that, we see the regulations around lockdown, loosen up. That being said, if things were to go the other way, and we found that we were moving into, say, future engagements around budget with increased restrictions, or, the upcoming election with increased restrictions, is it possible at a later date to say, with the Zoom package, we had subscribed for the 100 attendees package, we can then upgrade that bundle later on, if it were necessary? Is that a possible, is that an option?
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. CAO Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through to Councillor Magoon. That I believe is absolutely an option. We can adapt as we go, and things have changed a lot over the last year. So if they continue to, and there's other considerations or requirements that we need to address, we can look at doing that at that time.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Council. Councillor Magoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If there's no other questions, I'm prepared to provide a direction that committee direct administration to bring the future town hall options report to the April 6th, 2021 regular council meeting for approval of option 1 for future virtual town halls and other online organizational engagement events. I'll speak to it just really briefly. This is, I appreciate the background and the homework done by administration on this piece. I think this is just something that's essential that we want to get in order now rather than later, considering that, we never know when the COVID restrictions around getting together and meeting up in large groups is going to get worse or better. So now certainly the time to try and get that all ironed out. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Waugh.
I was just going to make the same direction that Councillor Magoon just made.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hawes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm in support of this 100%. I mean, the thing that I'm also looking forward to is if and when the restrictions lift, having a combined effort, both virtually and in face or face-to-face. I think having that ability, and allowing maybe some of our other citizens that may not feel comfortable coming out into the public and discussing, but having that opportunity to engage. I'm just looking forward to that opportunity as well. And with this package, I think it serves that purpose best for us as our community, especially the size of our community. So looking forward to the report April 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, is there anything further? Okay, seeing nothing, we will call to question. The committee direct administration to bring the future town hall options report to the April 6, 2021 regular council meeting for approval of option 1 for future virtual town halls and other online organizational engagement events. Council, all those in favor? Opposed? That was carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to information items, greenhouse training building. CEO Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is before council tonight in regard to a motion that was passed by council during the 2021 budget deliberations, requesting that more information be brought to council on future funding requests for the greenhouse training building. The inclusion of costs in the 5-year capital plan was based on an internal needs assessment of the building, as the lease was set to expire in June 2020, and potential use of the building moving forward for municipal purposes was discussed. Ultimately, the lease was renewed as the use of this building was not deemed essential at this time for municipal purposes. No budget or work will be required on the greenhouse training building until the expiry of the lease in mid-2023, where an additional needs assessment will be completed. In the meantime, the capital plan will be updated with that change for years moving forward. To provide a little additional context, there was some high-level information that was provided in the report. The amounts in the capital plan for future years did include items that are not emergent right now and can be addressed in future years instead. Those included mechanical, electrical, and utility upgrades. So electric panel upgrades and plumbing outside of the washroom, water line resizing and the building, and then as well reconfiguration, alteration, and additions as indicated in the report. So those, for example, would include washrooms and kitchens upgrade, a spatial study and drawings, some admin office reconfiguration depending on the use moving forward, interior finishing and furnishings, and some exterior work as well. So the recommended action tonight for this item is that committee accepts the greenhouse training building report for information. As indicated previously, the capital plan will be updated and council's next look at the 5-year capital plan will have those changes included. This time administration is happy to receive any questions from council on this item.
Okay. Thank you, CEO Olson. Council. Councillor Hawes.
Yeah, I'd like to see consensus that committee accepts the greenhouse training building report for information, please.
Thank you. Councillor Hawes, would you like to speak to it?
I think it's self-explanatory. I mean, it's not on this year's capital budget. It's going to be adjusted. We'll relook at this in 2023 when the lease is up and get more details on that. But seems like it's straightforward at this point. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawes. Council, we have a direction request on the table. Are there any comments, questions, debate, discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'd call to question then. That committee accept the greenhouse training building report for information. Council, all those in favor? And that was carried unanimously. Thank you. That brings us to council reporting. Let's start with Councillor Magoon.
Nothing to report and nothing urgent, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Magoon. Councillor Race.
Thank you, sir. Nothing to report.
Yep. Councillor Hawes.
Sorry about that. Nothing to report, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one thing from last week. We had our third to last wetland policy review session. So we're looking for the last of the feedback from all the stakeholders, including municipalities, by this Friday, in which case we'll have a meeting next week and then 2 weeks later, at which point the recommendations and the review will be made public and brought to the government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nelson. Councillor Waugh.
Nothing to report since our last meeting, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Mayor Michaels.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Nothing to report. Thank you.
Okay. And as for myself, I had a Hinton Regional Economic Development Coalition meeting last Wednesday. It was a very informative meeting. Some discussion around getting a post-secondary institution back to Hinton, some preliminary discussion with a couple different organizations and institutions, talk around online learning and potentially moving forward towards having some dedicated people set up to help coordinate post-secondary studies in the community and potentially even future physical resources. So that's good news. Very, very early stages, just beginning a discussion, but still interesting to see that there's some institutions that are interested in potentially setting up online learning and satellite campuses in our community. Also, there is a new initiative called the Hinton Bucks program that's going to be instituted in Hinton at some point in the near future. Bit of a shop local campaign that will be coming forward, hopefully starting this spring, April, May sometime. So that's something that we can look forward to. And the other thing to come out of that meeting was that the Hinton First website is being revamped and updated. So hopefully early this spring we'll be able to see the updated and revamped version of that website. And that is all that I have to report. That brings us urgent matters. Are there any urgent matters from council? Okay, seeing none, Chief Administrative Officer report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's just a couple of brief items. I did want to address, there's been a change in what the province had laid out for community peace officer enforcement of provincial restrictions through the health orders. I believe it was last week I reported that the ministerial order had lapsed and was not renewed, and therefore our CPOs would not be enforcing any provincial health orders moving forward. They've walked back on that just a little bit. It is now at the individual municipality level that the decision can be made for CPOs to enforce those restrictions. I took some time to speak to our community peace officers and just understand what that would mean. The additional reinforcement or additional enforcement of these restrictions has been minimal and can be added back to the scope of their responsibility without impact to their workload. This is important enforcement to our community and a service that has been appreciated, I think, by the community as well. We haven't had any issues really to address. So in which case we will be resuming that enforcement moving forward as per that change in what the province has laid out. So I did want to speak to that because it is a change. Communications on this will be going out to the community through our EOC update, and will be posted on the website as well under those sections. The other item I did want to speak to, there's been some questions recently around the reopening of our buildings. I'm speaking with our senior leadership team next week during our meeting to look at a phased reopening. We do want to be able to uphold that work from home order, and that's the reason why our buildings have been closed since the end of November, since that order came through. It's for the health and safety of our staff. We also want it to comply as best as possible to that order. But we are looking at ways to purposefully and safely reopen with some safe work practices in place and updated. This may also affect council meetings. We're looking at what's possible and researching what's required to resume in-person meetings. So some information and research will be used in making those decisions moving forward. At this time, not been aware of any complaints really on fast tracking a reopening. There's a lot in place online to support residents and customers that need to speak or do some administrative work. On our website, there's some good information there. As well, our buildings do remain open by appointment. So if somebody does have a reason that they need to come in, they need to speak to somebody, they can call and make an appointment or set up a meeting. And then we are happy to receive members of the public at that time. So I'll keep everyone updated through the next meeting or two as to what's going to be decided. But at this time, we're looking for a phased, purposeful reopening and to ensure that our staff have the ability to work from home if they need to, and if we deem that their personal attendance at the physical location of work, it's okay that we move ahead because we're still effective in serving our community. So just a little bit of an update there for council and the community on our buildings. And that's everything for me.
Thank you, CA Olson. Legislative Services update, Ms. Rendell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. Executive Assistant Logistics Information, Ms. Anderson.
And I have nothing to report.
All right, thank you. Council, that brings us to the end of our the open portion of our meeting. If I could get a motion to move to closed session. Councillor Hawes.
I'd like to move that we move into closed session, please.
Thank you. Council, all those in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Right. Thank you, everyone. Is there any additional business for today's meeting? Councilor Magoon?
No other business, Mr. Chair, but I'd be willing to furnish a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councilor Magoon. Council, motion to adjourn. All those in favor? And we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.